Dear listener, welcome back to the Marooned on Islands podcast. In the last two episodes, I talked about the emotional toll that social distancing can have and how we can embrace that isolation not as something to be afraid of, but as an opportunity to look inward. In future weeks, I'm going to explore other issues related to the interior life that we all might experience but rarely seem to talk about, such as mental health, friendship, resilience, and self-discovery. And I'll bring in works of art and literature to help us unpack these issues. If you like listening, please like, comment, subscribe to Marooned on Islands, and follow on Twitter for future content. Though the coronavirus situation is a huge disruption in our lives, disruption will often necessitate a change in perspective. Disruption compels us to adapt, and adaptation plays a key role in growth. Disruption takes many forms. Recently, a disruption in my own life prevented me from posting a new podcast episode for a few weeks. This was because my means of production were temporarily impaired. Here's what happened. For the third episode of the Marooned on Islands podcast, I wanted to talk about art, literature, film, music, visual art. I wanted to talk about what art is and what art does for us intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. I was going to talk about how during a time such as the one we are now in, when our lives are so different from how they used to be, we can look to art to help us express, understand, and process what we are going through. I was going to introduce that topic by playing a piece of music on the piano for you guys, and then talk about it. That was my plan for episode 3. But then I got interrupted. A few days before I was going to record the episode, I was cooking dinner, and I ended up burning my hand. It was the kind of thing where I was caught off guard, made a mistake, and resulted in getting burned. And when I say burn, I mean I was in tremendous, screaming pain for a solid 40 minutes and had waves of this throbbing pain in my hand for several hours after that. It ended up hurting for many days. It's still not healed, and at this point it's been a couple weeks. But the thing is, once I burnt my hand, I said, okay, that's it. I can't cook anymore until I'm healed. And because I burnt my hand, I also couldn't play piano anymore. If I can't play piano, I guess I can't record my podcast. Feeling like I couldn't record the next episode of the podcast was a big letdown, since we had just started this conversation on Marooned on Islands, and episode 3 was going to set up the kinds of topics I want to bring in the weeks ahead, specifically discussing works of art. A spontaneous event I hadn't planned for, burning my hand, disrupted my life and paralyzed my ability to work or create. Burning my hand was a disruption in my life that seemed small, but for some reason resulted in large consequences. Not just the pain in my hand, but my choice to then stop engaging in activities I enjoyed. Similarly, we're all experiencing a disruption right now with the coronavirus, an event outside ourselves that we as individuals can't control. It has disrupted the ways we work and the ways we relate to one another. Just as I can't engage with music because my burn prevents me from playing piano, we can't engage with art at museums, concerts, or theaters like we used to. But being told you can't is sometimes just an invitation to work harder or smarter until you find a way you can. Recently, I thought, okay, I burnt my hand really badly, so I can't play piano. I can't do what I had originally wanted to do, but why does that mean I can't continue working? Is there a way to work around this? How do I engage with art when my access to it is cut off, through a burnt hand or through social distancing shutdowns? Now, admittedly, the first impulse for most people right now will be how to stay healthy and how to get back to work. But I also think it's worthwhile to think about ways we can engage with art despite the disruptions we face. Art can help us make sense of the craziness that exists out there in the world, and that may also exist inside our own heads. Art isn't just for the lucky few who may find the time or money to leisurely enjoy some posh exhibit, and art is not just for the uniquely gifted. To interact with art is to explore and learn from the creations and achievements of the human spirit. You can engage with or make art at any point in your life. Art allows every individual, no matter his or her circumstances, to come closer to the sublime beauty of the world, and in so doing, to reach deeper into the innate wonder that exists within themselves. Whether it's a piece of writing, a song with a soaring guitar riff, a painting of someone from another era, or a film imagining fantastical worlds, artistic expression feeds our emotional and spiritual selves, the parts of us that can feel impoverished even despite material wealth. Art serves us by letting us experience what we otherwise could not. It makes the unseen seen by taking us to faraway lands or revealing the daily beauty in our own lives. It challenges us by changing our perspective. It increases our empathy by letting us walk in someone else's shoes. It heals us by making us feel understood. It reminds us of what we already know, and it can uplift and ennoble us, regardless of our station in life. I've had a lot of friends who don't like reading, or at some point started to hate reading because of assignments from school. It's pretty sad when this happens because reading shouldn't be a burden or obligation. Reading liberates you. Abolitionist Frederick Douglass said, "Once you learn to read, you will be forever free." Reading can open up your world unlike anything, and in so doing, it expands your mind. A good book will let you experience the world through the eyes of a new person. It lets you traverse terrain you've never seen yourself, be that adventuring through unknown worlds or plunging psychological or emotional depths you have yet to have the courage to witness in yourself. The pleasure of consuming books, like films or music or other art forms, is the opportunity for transcendence. Great art transports our consciousness into those of the characters. Our emotions are swept up with the swell of violins. Our minds wander into a dream of some other place, some other time, some other life. An old friend of mine once said that he had lived more in books and films than he had in his real life. And modern MRI imaging of our brains confirms this, capturing the activity that occurs in the brain as if it were real. Through art, we can live hundreds of lives in our one lifetime. But art doesn't just transport us to other worlds, it also transforms us by changing the way we interact with each other and with ourselves. Art gives voice to the voiceless. It bridges gaps in communication across boundaries of time, geography, and language. And perhaps most importantly, it allows the individual to feel understood. In looking at a work of visual art or seeing a film, the viewer comes across a moment of recognition, where though the circumstances may be different, something they see resonates with something within themselves. It is that feeling of, hey, I know what this is. I felt this. I thought it was only me who felt this, but it's not. As American writer F. Scott Fitzgerald once said, "That is part of the beauty of all literature. You discover that your longings are universal longings, that you're not lonely and isolated from anyone. You belong." So right now, yes, we do have certain priorities of taking care of our health, our loved ones, our financial security. But maybe understanding the kind of resource art can be can help us manage the uncertainty and the strangeness of the times we are living in. But again, how do we engage with art when it's been so abruptly cut off from us now everything is closed? It's very easy, once disrupted, to let ourselves slip into stopping something entirely. Once you are thrown off course, you can become paralyzed. I know that there are times in my life when, once interrupted, I lose my momentum. The amount of energy it takes to continue and finish the project seems insurmountable, and so I stop. Because I burnt my hand, I stopped cooking. Because I burnt my hand, I stopped playing piano. Because of my burnt hand, I can't engage with art in the same way. But maybe that is what the podcast is about. How we all can't engage with art, with work, or with each other in the same way, and so we need to find other ways. When there is a disruption in our routine or in our lives, we can feel adrift and aimless. Like a fish out of water, we don't know how to get back into the flow of working and creating. We can get stuck in these mental tracks where we tell ourselves that because of some inhibition, we can't do what we enjoy. And this doesn't just have to be a burnt hand or a global pandemic. These kinds of disruptions can range: moving to a new place, losing your job, a relationship falling apart, or maybe even something smaller, like a headache, getting stuck in traffic, running late, a bad day when you just don't want to get out of bed. However genuinely difficult these obstacles may be, it's easy to use those interruptions as excuses to stop our activity. It's easy to get stuck. Furthermore, it's also easy to get hurt. When I burned my hand, it was while I was trying to cook something I hadn't made before. It's a metaphor for when you try something new that you don't know how to do and you end up getting hurt. That can be discouraging and scare you into stopping. But it doesn't have to mean you don't try again. And when you try again, next time you might find a different way and do it better. There is an idea often used in yoga and functional fitness called modification. If a movement is too difficult for you or doesn't feel right in your body on a specific day, instead of not doing the movement altogether, you modify it to something you can do. You don't give it up or come back to it when you feel better. You instead change your approach to it. You become flexible, not just in your body, but in your mental attitude. I burnt my hand, so I felt like I had to stop cooking. But maybe I'm allowing it to prevent me from doing what I want to be doing. I'll let my burn heal on its own schedule, but maybe I can modify. Maybe I can wear gloves or prepare cold food. I can't play piano for a while, and that disrupted my podcast schedule. But maybe I can change the content. Maybe the podcast wasn't just about my getting to make music for you guys today, but about what happens when you can't make, when you can't create, when you have to find another way to engage with art, when you can't work the way you're used to. When we have bad days, or are sick, or are going through a difficult period emotionally, we do sometimes need to rest and heal. But sometimes what we need is to keep pushing, to get back on our feet again and try a different way, modify our approach, so that we can still move forward and engage in the things that we love even through the bad days. In the first episode, I talked about how social distancing and self-isolation are not unlike other moments of uncertainty in our lives that we find ways to get through. Just as we discussed other moments of uncertainty, these kinds of disruptions that we might not plan for or anticipate interrupt our way of life. But when these moments come up, when we are disrupted and set off balance, we can practice modification, redirecting and adapting so we can approach the obstacle from a new perspective, maneuver around it, overcome it, and keep moving forward. And when it comes to art and creating, some of the best work emerges when you feel limited or depleted, or when you feel you simply can't create anymore. Having limits and pushing your comfort zone can actually provide a structure wherein we can mess around, choose modifications, and make something new. Next time, I hope I get to share some music with you. Until then, we can think about moments we've experienced when we've responded to a disruption in our lives. What obstacles did you encounter? What modifications did you make? Have you experienced a time when you felt limited or burned out and still had to create something? Disruptions may hurt at first, like a burn, but they can also bring about new spaces to make discoveries. Sending out love and hopes for discovery through the disruption. Until next time.